Welcome to another piano lesson with Warren. My name is Warren McPherson. Thank you for joining me here today. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at altered extensions. What are altered extensions and how you can use them in your playing, and just give you some overall rule when you're using altered extension so that you don't sound like you're playing out of key. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to look at altered extension, and I'm going to sort of move between the key of C and F for examples. So let's talk about intervals, because that's where everything starts from. We have a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and an octave. Once we go beyond an octave now, we're getting to what we call the extensions, because you start to double up notes, right? Because down here we have the second, but when we play that same note an octave away, we now call this the ninth, which is an extended interval. This is a major third or compound third. We don't really, doesn't create any sort of additional color to the chord. It's just a compound third. We have the 11th, we have the 12th, same thing as the third, it's just a part of the root triad. Then we have the 13th, and that's where we stop. Here we just call this a compound 7, compound octave, and so on. So the extensions that we're going to be focused on today is the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. And we're going to look at their alterations. So if I take a C major chord and I put a 7th in there, this becomes a C major 7th, yeah? But then when I put the 9th, it becomes a C major 9th. If I were to flat the 7, this chord now becomes a dominant 7th chord. C dominant 7th. If I put the 9th, it becomes a dominant 9th. Now, there are two things I can do with this 9th. I can flat it by going to the left by a half step, lower that note, and now this becomes a flatted 9th chord. C7, flat 9. That's the first extension, altered extension. And altered mean an alteration from its original. So from the 9th, we alter it by lowering this note to become a flat 9th. We can also raise the notes to become a sharp 9th. That then becomes a C7 sharp 9. Moving along, if we jump to the other extension, which is the 11th, and I'll just keep the 9th down here. I can raise this 11th, and now this chord is a sharp 11th chord. C7 sharp 11th, or C9 sharp 11th. We don't have a flat 11th because that's, if we were to flat the 11th, it's just the major third again, or compound third. So there's no such thing as a flat 11th, only sharp 11th, because we're focusing on what we call the colored tone. Tone that does not belong to the diatonic harmony. Yeah, just a triad. A flat 11th would be just a major third. So there's no such thing as a flat 11th, but you have the sharp 11th. Now, an important thing to note as it relates to altered extension, we always keep the 7th, whether it be a major 7th or a dominant 7th. We always have a 7th in the chord because the 7th acts as a bridge to take us over into the extensions. So we always have a 7th. Stuff like the flat 9th, sharp 9th, sharp 11th, you almost always see that chord with a dominant 7th. You can have a major 7 or major 9 sharp 11. In fact, this is a beautiful chord. But you can also have a dominant 7 sharp 11th. You can have a major 7th, flat 9th, sharp 11th. All these are altered extensions. You can combine them. There's no rule that says you have to play a sharp 11th with a flat 9th or a sharp 11th with a sharp 9th. There's no rule. It's all about personal taste and the sound that you're going for. All these different variations. These are altered extended harmonies, yeah? After we pass the 11th, now we get to the 13th. You can play the 13th with the 11th, or you can omit the 11th and just play the 9th, for in this case a dominant 9th with the 13th, a C 13th. And again, remember that the extensions get their name based on the root note. The distance from the root to this note is a 9th. Distance from the root to this note is 11th. Distance from this note to this note is a 13th. 13th tones. So that's how extensions get their name. So if I were to go to G as my root, and I say, what's the 13th note away from G, it would be this. If I have C sharp or D flat as my root note and I said what's the 13th, would be this. What's the 11th, it would be this. What's the 9th, would be this. And so before you can get comfortable with altered extended chords, you first have to be able to see these intervals really quickly as the chords change, yeah? A couple rules or shortcuts that I use when I was just learning this to quickly find these is that the 9th is the same thing as the 2nd. The 11th is the same thing as the 4th. The 13th is the same thing as the 6th. So if you think about it in that context, then you can find those intervals easier. Because in truth, in fact, the thing that separates the altered extension is the 7th. If I just play this, like this, I'm playing just a C add 9. Once I put a 7th in there, the chord changed to a C major 9. Yeah? This can be a C add 9 or a C2, but then I put a 7 in there and it become a dominant 9th. So just know that the 7th is very important note. The 7th is the bridge. When playing any form of extensions or altered extension, you need that 7th. Now let's go back to the 13th. With the 13th, there's one thing you can do with the 13th, and that's to flat the 13th. We don't have sharp 13th because the sharp 13th would be the same thing as the 7th. You can't have a 7th and a sharp 13th. It's the same note. So we only have flat 13th. So in other words, the only altered extension that you can have a sharp and a flat, or a sharp or a flat, is the 9th. You can have a flat 9th, or you can have a sharp 9th. But the 11th, you only have sharp 11th, or the regular natural 11th. The 13th, you can only have the regular 13th or the flat 13th. So that's the rules. That's sort of how altered extensions work. Yeah? Now, how do you use these in songs? Well, to be honest, it requires a little bit of finesse and understanding of voicing to use these effectively. But let's take a look at, I'm going to jump to the key of F. Take a look at this song. So that was Lord, You Are Welcome. And I'm going to show you some places that you can use the flat ninth altered extension. So, right here on that 5 chord. But look how I'm voicing it. Because I'm playing the melody, I made sure that the melody's on the top. But I stuck my flat ninth right here in the middle. Lord, You are welcome in this place. Lord, You are welcome in this place. A flat ninth again on this chord. That's the flat ninth. Because I'm keeping my melody at the top, keeping it nice, so that the altered extensions doesn't bother this chord. Lord, You are welcome in this place. Have Your way. Check out this chord. So in this chord, I'm using a flat 13th, and I'm using a sharp 9th. Now let's talk about that for a little bit. Why was I able to use so many alterations in that chord? Well, first, notice that all of my alterations are diatonic harmony. What am I talking about? We're in the key of F. Meaning, all these notes are considered diatonic harmony because they belong to the key of F. So when I do, it's a C, which is my sharp ninth, because again, the distance from A to C is a sharp ninth. Distance from A to B is a ninth. So once I raise this a half step, it becomes a sharp ninth. So my sharp ninth's a diatonic note. So that's why it doesn't sound that ugly. Also my flat 13th down here. Why is this a flat 13th? Because I have a 5. My 5 of E is here. So then this note, we wouldn't call it a sharp 5 because I already have a 5. So you can't have 2 5 in the chord. So it becomes a flat 13th. That's the interval of a 13th. So once I lower this note, it becomes the flat 13th. So you realize that all my diatonic notes, my sharp 13th is the root of the diatonic key that we're playing in. And then I just resolve that to my flat 9. And that's a turnaround that I use right there to get to my 6, because the song sort of starts from the 6. Lord, You are welcome in this place. Lord, You are welcome in this place. Lord, You are welcome in this place. Have Your way. Then turn around. And I can use a sharp 9 to sharp 5, which is also known as an altered chord. Once you have the flat 13th, flat 13th and the sharp 9th, it's an altered chord. You know, if I remove this right here, then it becomes sort of just a sharp 9, sharp 5. If I simply add the 5th, it becomes a flat 13th. So that's why I just call it an altered chord all through and through. Now let's talk about something about the flat 9th. The flat 9th works a lot of the times, especially when playing gospel music, because A lot of the flat ninth in the chords come from the blues scale. And let me further explain that. If we take F blues scale, that's F blues. You know, so when you want that bluesy sound, we pull out that scale. But check it. Check the notes that belongs to the F blues. So when I'm playing a D7 flat ninth, my flat ninth right here is an E flat. It belongs to the blues scale, the F blues. If I'm playing a G7 flat 9, this is my flat 9 right here. It's also another note from the blues scale. If I'm playing a B flat 7 flat 9, it's also a note from the flat 9 is also a note from the blues scale. So you realize that's why a lot of the times gospel pianists use flat ninth in their chords, because it gives you that bluesy sound, that sort of urban sound, that soul, that gospel sound. So you use flat nine all over the place and you're going to start sounds like a jazz pianist, a bluesy, gospel-y jazz pianist. You know, let's jump to this song, What a Fellowship. So anyways, so what I was doing on this song, I was using some of the flat ninths, but I also used the sharp ninths. But check out this place that I use the sharp ninths. I go, what a fellowship, what a joy divine leaning. See that? Because it's a quick passing chord, so I'm using the sharp ninth right here, and I'm also using the sharp 5. Now, why is that the dissonance didn't ring out with all those alterations? Again, because I'm using diatonic harmonies for my altered extensions, or I should say diatonic notes. Right here, my sharp 9 is a C, and my sharp 5 is an F. So it works nicely. You don't hear the dissonance. And that's a rule I want you to keep in mind whenever you're using altered extensions. Use the altered extensions on chords that, okay, let me see how I can phrase this. You want your altered extensions to be as diatonic as possible. That's the best way I can put it. Diatonic meaning sticking with notes from the key you're playing in. Once you start to use too many non-diatonic notes, the songs become dissonant real quickly. And so I get messages from folks saying, hey, I'm trying to use all these extensions in my playing, but it doesn't sound good the way you use it. And that's the number one rule. Now, I'm not saying you can't use altered extensions that takes you out of the key. You can. But it requires an advanced understanding to do that. And in fact, I do that mostly when I'm using passing chords. But if you're new to altered extensions, try to stick with the notes that's going to be diatonic when you form those extensions. So let's try it again. So we have... See, the melody's on the F, and my sharp ninth is here. The flat ninth again, Works nicely then. That can do. This is just a reharm chord right here. I use a flat 6, that takes me to the 6. Tritone sub. And this is a sharp 5. So you see, I was able to use some non-chromatic notes, non-diatonic notes there, but it's because I'm experienced with working with these that I know, oh, I could slip that in there. And when I use a sharp 5 right here, and make sure that again it's buried. It's not on the top. The melody's on the top. So you go, leaning, safe and secure from all. Huh? And again, because that note comes from the blues scale, all around, leaning, Christ my Savior, leaning on. Again, all of these notes came from the blues scale. Sorry. See? Blues scale. So you see now the sort of pattern in altered extension. It requires a little bit of finesse, understanding, and experience, but if you take nothing else away from this video, take that, try to make your altered extension as diatonic as possible. And then once you get comfortable, you're going to realize you can start to venture out, you know, put a little notes here and there. And I would say, if I were to add a rule number 2 to this, is once you start to go outside, see if you can find the diatonic notes that voice to the blues scale. Because once we're playing gospel, bluesy, jazzy, you can almost use the blues scale most times, yeah? So if you start to voice your altered extensions to hit those bluesy tone, ooh, it's going to sound great, you know? Check out another song, As the Deer. A lot of you guys know this one, so. It's my sharp 5. Again, diatonic. Turn around. On my sharp 9th. Now, why I could use even more dissonance here? Because it's just a turnaround, so there's no melody there to create sort of dissonance. Let's do that passage again. Then, right here I'm using a tritone substitution so I could make this note into a sharp 11th. And again, note that my sharp 11th is a diatonic note. That tritone again. So you see, even when I go, this becomes a sharp ninth chord. I could have done, or flat ninth again. So that's it, guys. This is just a surface introduction to altered extension. In a few weeks, I'm coming out with a full course that's going to go a lot more in depth, and it's going to cover all 12 keys of how you can voice all these different chords in various progressions in all 12 keys. That altered extension course is coming out in a few weeks. But hopefully this was informative for you, gives you an understanding, sort of some ideas to explore and experiment with when you're using altered extension. Two things I want you to take away from this video is that try to make your altered extension as diatonic as possible. So when you're playing around these chords, try to voice to make sure your extensions are more on the diatonic side. And that will take away some of the dissonance from using altered extension. And step number 2, once you want to bring a little bit more dissonance into your chord progressions, voice to the blues scale. Alter the notes so they sort of incorporate notes from that blues scale, that from the key you're playing in, and that will give you that nice gospel bluesy jazzy sound. All right, so thanks for watching. Please give me a subscribe, a thumbs up, and leave a comment in the comment section below so I can jump in and chat with you. As always, my name is Warren McPherson. Keep listening, keep singing, and keep practicing, and catch you next week for another tutorial. Have a blessed week.